Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Switch On. I'm your host, Ben Lamoureux, and as usual, I'm joined by two guests this week. So Aric was previously on our E3 episode, and now he's back for some more. Welcome back, Aric.
Back for more indeed. Hey guys, I'm excited to be back on. Let's talk some Pokemon.
Heck yeah. And then joining us for the first time on the podcast is Danny Thompson. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about how Pokemon isn't good.
All right, well, that's a little spoiler territory, but yeah, for this week's discussion segment, we're going to look ahead and talk about Pokémon Sword and Shield, what we like, what we don't like, our hopes and fears and dreams. But first, we're going to go over some of the more interesting Nintendo news from the past couple weeks. You guys ready to dig in?
Let's do it.
Oh my gosh.
All right, first up, we got a couple of stories about former Nintendo presidents. So there is a book all about Satoru Iwata, and it's been, I think it just recently published in Japan,
yes.
And we just learned that it's going to be translated and localized into English as well. So I don't know about you guys, but I think that's probably going to be on my must-buy list.
Oh, easily. From what I can tell and from what people have already translated from it, this seems to be not only a very somber book, just because it's like kind of like exploring and chronicling the people who were touched by this creative force known as Satoru Iwata, but it's also just going to be this really interesting and transparent look into Nintendo of Japan, which I feel like a lot of people don't really know exactly how Nintendo of Japan has operated, because apart from it being in another country, it is a very secretive and closed off space.
Yeah, no kidding, it's like Alcatraz.
Yeah, and I think adding to that, Danny, I think there's a younger generation of Nintendo fans that the Switch has brought out that perhaps don't know as much about Satoru Iwata and the impact he's had on the company overall. So I just feel like the book coming out and being published and getting localized is great for just expanding the reach of Nintendo fans knowing about Satoru Iwata and the legacy he had.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for, like, the average CEO, I wouldn't really care. I'm not, like, the kind of guy who wants to buy every, like, biography from every rich person. I don't care for most of them. But, Iwata, he wasn't your typical company leader. He loved, like, getting down there and, like, programming himself. There's all these stories about him saving games, like, single-handedly because he was a coding wizard and was able to fix key problems they were having. And then just, like, as a person, he seems like he was a really good mentor and close friend to a lot of people. So this is maybe, like, the one CEO book I would actually buy.
Yeah.
Definitely. And he had a direct impact on the Switch itself, because before the Switch launched in 2017, he was leading development on it and was really interested in the hybrid functionality. So Iwata had such a big part in the console we all love and are all playing today. And the book will give a great look into that.
Yeah, it was kind of his last gift to humanity.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I'm very excited for it. From what I'm not going to say who translated it just because like we're now getting an official one, but from the fan translation that I read, like this book, quite literally the first couple pages are just so heartbreaking already because it just starts with Iwata's funeral. And it's like, I have an excerpt of the first paragraph like pulled up here just to verify that it was, and it's just like who said what, like what the entire like environment was like, and it's gonna be a sad book, like is the thing. Everyone is very sad that Iwata is gone, and this book very eloquently is gonna portray how not only people were affected by his life, but how people are trying to like push forward past his death. So I'm incredibly excited for the official translation.
Yeah, and I should add, like, it's a great time for the book to come out now because Nintendo is doing so well comparatively to the position they were in when he died. When he passed away, they were selling, an overall 12 million units with the Wii U. Now they're doing over 30 million, I think, with the Switch. Things are a lot different.
Close to 40 now.
Yeah, things are a lot different, and the book will be, like, a cap of that, sort of.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to slightly happier presidential news. Reggie fils-aime recently weighed in on the fact that there is a "My Body is Ready" achievement in Gears of War 5. So it's it's always great to bust out the Reggie memes. But what I like about this is just how it shows how much the industry has changed, where you have Microsoft putting Nintendo-themed, rewards into their games and everything like that. It's really interesting to me how these two companies have really buddied up to each other in recent years.
Yeah, I think him no longer being like directly associated like with Nintendo allows him a little bit more freedom, not just in the sense that he's like, oh, I can curse now and not have to be like really straight-laced because I run a company whose primarily the target audience is kids. I think it's interesting because it's like you see that like cross-pollination now with like other companies. He's always being friendly with Jeff Keighley. I mean, he wasn't able to have a Twitter before he retired, so
yeah. And he's a force on Twitter now, man. He's tweeting left and right, and it's hilarious. I think everybody loves it. And
Reggie Unchained.
It's like, I feel like we all felt like Reggie had a great personality, but he barely got to show it while he was working with Nintendo. Like, there were those quirky moments in directs and like during live presentations and stuff like that, but he never really had like a public voice, and now that he does, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so moving on. We have some stories about some games in the works, including one from Capcom. So a little while back, they sent out an email to members of their ambassador program for the Resident Evil franchise in Japan to have people apply to test a secret game. And now that's been expanded to the US as well. So if you are part of the Resident Evil ambassador program, you might actually have a chance to go try some mystery new Resident Evil game in the works. What do you guys think about that?
Well, so I did get this email, and I 100% signed up for it, and I will fly down to Los Angeles if I get accepted. From what I can tell, I don't know what to make of this. Most people, the obvious thing, they're like, oh, it's either a Resident Evil 3 remake since number 2's remake did so well. Or it's like, this is Resident Evil 8 now. And weirdly, I don't think it's either of them. From what I can tell, so I was reading some Reddit comments, and some random person on there that I'm not going to be able to credit.
This is the most accurate source ever.
Yes, I know. Some random person on Reddit said that they did market research for Capcom and was like, hey, only recruit people that are like 18 to 23 years old. And also like online games. And so the reason why I think they're just like going out and like recruiting, because they didn't recruit for Resident Evil 2's remake, if I remember correctly. And they didn't recruit for Resident Evil 7, which is when the ambassador program started. So I do think it might be some sort of like thing that the team that made Resident Evil, not Umbrella Chronicles, Operation Umbrella, whatever that third person
Operation
online.
Raccoon City.
Well, so there was that one, but there was also one that was like Umbrella Corps. That's what it was, Umbrella Corps. So
I
think,
the 3v3 shooter or whatever.
Yeah, and I think this is probably maybe gonna be almost like a Destiny-like game, possibly. And I mean, that's just again, like, I don't have any sources to back that up, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a Resident Evil Outbreak reboot. If you guys remember those first two online games on the PS2. I wouldn't be surprised if it's that.
I never played them myself.
I don't play much Resident Evil. I've only casually played a couple of my friends' games, so I don't really have much experience with the franchise. So, yeah, I don't have much to say on this one.
I would love a 3 remake. I never got around to playing 3 because I'm garbage with those old tank controls and forced camera angles and needing ink ribbons to save and all that nonsense. I loved the 2 remake, so obviously I'd love a 3 remake as well. But I doubt that they would need to test for that because, like you said, the 2 was so well received. It's like, okay, just take that exact formula and apply it to 3. Like, make it faithful to the game, but with modern graphics and controls and, quality of life adjustments. Yeah. So I don't really think they would need to do like focus testing.
Yeah, because I mean, basically when companies do this, it's either one of two things: they can't afford QA testers, or don't want to pay for QA testers, which is why EA does their like, we'll give you a free copy of Battlefield 5 if you come up to Washington and play Plants vs. Zombies. It's either the sort of thing where they like don't have enough money to QA test one of their new Resident Evil games, even though those games, from what I can tell, are doing great ever since 7, and it's also just like the other situation it could be is if it is just this like online game and they need to test like a bunch of people playing it. And I mean, on the flip side, why wouldn't they just like be like, all right, we're releasing a private demo that you can download. You don't have to be in the LA area. I think we'll hear about this probably next week at Gamescom, because apparently they're going to be announcing some stuff there. But
I have a very different take on this.
Oh, really?
I saw the email, and it mentions that this is a game in early development. So I don't think this is like in the like QA testing phase. I think this is in the we're experimenting and want to take things in a new direction, and we want to make sure people don't hate it phase.
Well, so what if it is like, what if they? No, I don't want to get like all theorizing, but what if it is like a combination of like like they bring back the co-op stuff that they did in 5 and 6?
Yeah, that's possible.
And like one person is in first person and another person is in third person. Like they combine the two different gameplay styles that they've managed to create with the RE engine.
It seems like that might be a little confusing for
I
players,
know,
maybe, but
right?
7 had this big shift to first-person gameplay, so I could see them, if they decided that they didn't want to continue that, if they're like, no, we want to change it up again, wanting to get the fan input on that first. But whatever it is, I'm expecting it to be something a little experimental, but I doubt it's something we'll hear about too soon if they were being honest about the whole this is an early development thing.
Yeah. It does take over multiple days, by the way, when you sign up. Oh, no, it is an or. I put down myself as and, but it is a, do you want to do September 20th or 21st?
Right.
And I was like, put me down for both.
Yeah, so there was 2 dates for each event.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, good luck to you. Hopefully you get in.
It seems very much like conceptually they're kind of nervous about whatever they may be showing, so they want like more genuine feedback from the testing pool. That's just what it seems like to me, but yeah.
Yeah, and these are ambassadors, so they're the people that, have the most invested in the franchise.
Exactly.
So it makes sense to bring them in early if you're contemplating changes.
For sure.
The only 2 requirements that they have here is it's like, hey, you have to have already been registered in the program, and also you have to have played a Resident Evil title before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could throw us for a loop. It could be a match 3 puzzle game.
Let's hope that's not the case.
That would be so funny. I wouldn't even be mad if I walked in there and it was just a bunch of mobile phones.
You guys have phones, right? That's what they'd say.
Like, that's what they look at us when we're all shocked, and they're like, you guys have phones, right? You know what these are. Why are you looking so shocked?
Yes, we have phones.
Alright, so moving on, there's recently been a sort of revival for Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, and Activision has indicated, I believe in like a quarterly investors meeting or something like that, that they have more content coming for those franchises. So, I don't know exactly what that means, whether it's a spin-off game or like a brand new main series game or what, but it's kind of neat to see these sort of like mascots from our childhood back in the spotlight again.
Okay, so you say mascots from your childhood, and I was never a Crash or Spyro kid. However, last week I started playing Crash, the trilogy on Switch, and I've tried to play the Crash on like PS1, and like I've played it in Uncharted 4. I guess spoilers? I don't know if that's a spoiler, but you play Crash in Uncharted 4. If you didn't know that already, then you're probably just like, wait, what?
It's been out for a while.
Okay,
so.
It has been, actually, now that I think about it. So I never got it. It never clicked with me. And then when I was sitting down, like on the couch with the Switch in my hand playing Crash, I was like, I got it now. Okay, this is a very good game. This is a great game. So I'm really excited to finally try Spyro, since that comes out, I believe, September 2nd on the Nintendo Switch. Just because those ports, those remasters are amazing.
Yeah, they're spectacular. I'm not surprised that we're seeing new content, just because after the remakes came out and they were so successful, I kind of knew that there would be new games in the pipeline. I'm really hoping that we get some sort of new racing game with Crash, just because like Crash Team Racing has been, we just got that remake and it's great, but adding to that and giving us a new racer that is completely new, I think could do something great for the franchise, as well as a just completely expansive new game. Because Crash is what I lean to more so than Spyro, although I've played games in both franchises. And like you were saying, Danny, you didn't really like Crash, or you weren't a Crash kid growing up, but you just recently got on board. I get what you mean, because they have a very distinct flavor and style. It's like if you play a 3D Mario game and then you jump to Crash, it feels wonky. But once you play it for a while, you realize that there's a style to it. So I'm
going with a clean palette.
Yeah, totally. I'm just really happy to see that the franchises are going to get new games, because they deserve a modern audience and modern development behind the new games. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I think those developers have proved themselves with those Crash and Spyro remasters. And Crash Team Racing 2, despite like Activision being like, oh, now you're gonna add a battle pass to it and some other like weird stuff that's happening with that. I think it'll be interesting to see if they decide to make a sequel to it, because like a part of Crash that I've noticed is that like any good platformer, while 50% of it is gameplay, the other 50% of its appeal to me is just like how the levels are structured and how imaginative the character designs are and just the overall design of it. So I that really is what the exercise would be for them that time around,
for sure.
Is just understanding level design and stuff like that. And there's no way that they don't just get compared to like Crash 2. So it's gonna be scary for them. Like I'd be super nervous if I was them and Activision was like, all right, you're making another Crash game, just like those first three.
Yeah, you don't want it to be like, when Duke Nukem got revived and everyone hated it, you know?
No, exactly.
Alright, so moving on, we got a couple smaller Pokemon stories before we get to our big discussion later. The first one is that the Pokemon Company pulled in just under $3 billion in retail revenue in 2018, which I don't know if there's much to say about this other than just, holy crap, that's a lot of money.
That is sure a lot of money, yeah. I mean, the Pokemon Company is sitting pretty right now. They just need to make good decisions, and hopefully they are. I think they are with Sword and Shield, but some people disagree.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah.
And yeah, most of that comes from Pokemon Go, but, the series has obviously been extremely lucrative for a, long time, for decades now, but Pokemon Go just took it to a whole other level.
Yeah.
And continues to be top performing app. I mean, even though the Pokemon Go hype isn't still really around, I still see people pretty much whenever I'm in the downtown of my city, I see people playing it. It's a popular app still.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, for sure. Pokemon Go is a force to be reckoned with in my downtown area. Like it's nuts. It's funny because like they all went and they were like, oh, we're gonna play the Harry Potter one now. It was like maybe like a day when people were playing the Harry Potter one, and they were just like, I'm going back to Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I've seen very little hype for that.
Team Mystic, all the way.
Yeah. Oh goodness, I'm Team Mystic as well.
Sweet.
It's weird. It's like all the cool people are on Team Mystic.
What a coincidence.
Alright, so then the last Pokemon story we have for this segment is that there is a Pokemon Center coming to London later this year. So this is going to be like a pop-up deal where it's not actually, a permanent residence. It's just going to be there for a little while. But I think it's really cool, and I would love to see more of this in major cities, because it's kind of shocking to me, like, how few of them they actually are. And I feel like I think there would really be a market for that globally, especially with the popularity of Pokemon Go, bringing it to just kind of, the average everyday person who maybe otherwise would not consider themselves a video game player.
Yeah, I think pop-up shops like this are pretty awesome. Like they have the Kirby Cafe in Japan. They don't do a lot of it worldwide, like you said, but I can't even imagine how successful it'd be if there was something like a Pokemon Center in Los Angeles or a Pokemon Center in San Francisco. I think there's such an audience for that, totally. And I think it's going to do really well in London.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think the only place where you can get like Pokemon Center merchandise that isn't in, because there isn't one in America, right? Like there isn't a Pokemon Center store.
Not that I'm aware of.
Like it's just the big one that's in, or the big ones that are in Japan. And really, if you want to get that official like Pokemon Center merchandise, in America, at least, you have to go to like the Nintendo New York store. And then like GameStop has like a revolving selection of the stuff that they sell, like the plushes that they sell at the Japanese store. So
Yeah.
I hope this paves the way to a Pokemon Center store opening in America, hopefully sometime. But
Like, what do you guys think about, like, if they did a tour like they're doing with the Switch, but they around the U.S. and they just went state to state and had pop-up shops for a couple weeks? I think that could do
That'd be pretty great.
really well, and that I feel like would speak to the community aspect of Pokemon Go, because everybody in the country's playing it. So
yeah, I think it would be especially good as like an event to pitch, like to bring your family to, bring the kids, come check out the pop-up Pokemon Center.
Yeah.
They could
That's
have
an incredible
professional
idea.
cosplayers.
I would go.
Because I feel like apart from the store in Japan, like really it's not like they're trying to get regulars. Like the one in Japan, it's like obviously like our revolving tourists are the ones that are our customers. And so just having one in a permanent place in America would be kind of weird. Because if it was just some random place.
Yeah, I think it would do well, but either way, I want to see a pop-up shop.
I'd rather have the pop-up shop. Even if it's a state away, I will drive to that thing and get a Mimikyu or whatever they're going to be offering there.
A Galarian wheezing.
There we go.
Alright, so moving on, we have some stories about the new and improved Switch model. So, there's been a lot of confusion around this, I've noticed online. Nintendo hasn't been super great about communicating what the situation is. So obviously there's the Switch Lite coming out next month, but there is a new model that's already out now in some places and just kind of slowly being distributed to other stores. So it may or may not be on store shelves in your town. How you can tell is that the slightly older model has white on the box, whereas the slightly newer model has a solid red box. So basically the difference is that it has a slightly better screen, it's a little brighter, the colors are a little truer, and that it has a significantly better battery. In a test done by some people with YouTube channels, they found that it has like around a 50% better battery life, so that's a pretty significant increase. What do you guys think about this new model?
It's a good step, yeah. It's a good step for them to like transition into like the Switch Mini stuff, because as far as I can tell, the Switch Mini only has like maybe 30 minutes to an hour or more battery life than the base Switch already had, and I think that this is a decent enough upgrade to tide people over until the Switch Pro comes out, especially with the deal where you can just like trade in your current Switch at GameStop for like $200. You get the extra $25, and then it only costs you like $75 to buy the new model. And I think it's a smart decision by Nintendo, because at that point now you have a bunch of pre-owned Nintendo Switches that are around like $250 to $270, and they might not have as great of a battery life, just in case people still want the like portable and home console experience. And then if they don't care about that, they can go even lower to like a Switch Mini. So I think it's good because they're giving people more options, like price-wise, and they're also getting people to buy the same system twice, which Nintendo's very good at.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, my concern with the Switch has always been how they're gonna really get the portable aspect out of it, because it's just so hard to run console-level games without, being plugged in on the go. As we know, the original Switch had like a 3-hour battery life, so a 50% improvement is pretty extreme, and I think that will bode well for players that want on the go as their primary way to play. And overall, I just think this is good news, because whenever Nintendo can make the Switch more portable, I think that's the ultimate way they're going to sell the Switch. Like, the Switch's maximum potential is as a handheld system, and I think they're kind of playing to that aspect of it right now.
Yeah, just historically in terms of sales, Nintendo handhelds always outperform their console counterparts, so you really want to lean into that market.
Definitely.
I want this thing, but I can't really justify spending $75 for a slightly better battery and screen, so I think I'm going to hold off and just kind of hope that eventually a Switch Pro launches. But yeah, I think if you haven't bought a Switch yet, just be on the lookout for that. Make sure you get the fully red box, because it's better.
Yeah, make sure you get the fully red box, yeah.
For sure. And then also, I've heard kind of conflicting things with GameStop. Like you said, Danny, you can get up to $225 by trading in. Apparently, some GameStops are saying they can't transfer your data in stores. Others are saying they can. So just check with your local GameStop, see if they know whether they can do it or not.
Yeah, because even if it's a thing where they're suggesting, hey, like, you can just back up all your saves to the cloud and then just re-download everything. The stuff, what is it? It's Splatoon 2 and Pokemon. Yeah, you're unable to upload your cloud saves to. So you'd be losing your data on that if you go that route.
And of course, anyone who doesn't have Nintendo Switch Online doesn't have access to cloud saves either. So.
Yeah, and I mean, that's true too. So.
Alright, so moving on, our next segment is pretty much a rough one. We have a few stories about how video games have come in the crosshairs because of violence, particularly in the US. So obviously there's been a lot of mass shootings recently, and frankly for many years now in the US.
Yeah.
And it's pretty common for politicians and the media to blame it partially or sometimes fully on video games. And so recently, that happened once again, including President Trump, who suggested that video games were a major contributor to a culture of violence that inspires these types of things. So Reggie fils-aime, Nintendo of America's former president, weighed in and said, "Facts are facts. Video games don't cause violence." So, yeah, a lot of people in the industry have sort of had that general backlash against this narrative that games are responsible. What do you guys think about all this?
I think it's good that Reggie is so outspoken and actually, relaying the facts and reaffirming to people that video games don't cause violence in general. But I think it's pretty unfortunate that, like, huge companies like Walmart are still removing things like signs and stuff like that, because that really does play into the idea of video games causing violence to the average consumer. So that aspect of it, honestly, could hurt the way video games are viewed, sort of on a mass level, just because if corporations, like, on a mass level sort of adopt the idea and principle that video games in their stores and their online markets are generally bad, then they may not sell as many, but I'm not sure. It's a super complicated topic, and it's unfortunate that video games have been the target of all it.
I know that it's not incredibly, like, obviously if you're going to look at Nintendo's library, there isn't very much that you'd be able to point to and be like, see, this makes people violent, other than like maybe Mario Maker 2. Because some people just make levels that, oh man, I haven't felt anger in a way like that ever in my life. But obviously, if you look at some other games, most video games are shooters. Most successful video games, especially, like, a lot of them are violent. A lot of action games are. But the only rope that I'm ever gonna give individuals who are like, video games cause violence, is that I think, like, more so any game with a gun in it, or like the fetishization of like guns, come from a culture that already exists in America. Because when you look at games which aren't typically made in America, like Nintendo games, you really don't see as many guns. Actually, you don't really see as many first-person shooters. And I think it is just because the video games are reflecting the culture, and not so much the other way around. So that's the only rope that I'd give to that argument. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like, just look up Jack Thompson. He used to be a huge figurehead for this whole, like, video games cause violence and everything. Like,
yeah,
especially when GTA was huge in the early 2000s.
Yep, and I remember, growing up and the controversy about, like, Mortal Kombat and all that too. So in general, video games have been a scapegoat for a lot of different kinds of violence, and it's just a story that keeps repeating itself. But I would say, moving on to a slightly less disturbing topic, but it's still not great. We're going to talk about loot boxes, everyone's favorite pseudo-gambling mechanic in video games. So this is actually another place where the government has kind of been interacting with the games industry. There's been some investigations into whether or not they should be classified as gambling, whether loot boxes should be allowed, whether certain kinds of pay-to-win microtransactions should be allowed. And so recently, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all announced that they will be disclosing, or they will be requiring developers to disclose odds for loot boxes. So if you want to publish a game on Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation, then you have to, be upfront about what the odds are. And then separately, Epic Games also pledged to do the same for theirs. So I don't know. This is a good start, I would say. It at least gives people the data to work with. But do you guys think this is enough, or do you think that this shouldn't have even been done in the first place? What do you guys think about this?
I think loot boxes just inherently aren't bad, but this transparency is what we need in the industry for consumers not to get just duped. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to, gamble on something in a game like that and perhaps not get what you want, but labeling it is important, and I think this is, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, this is a strong step in the right direction, really. Because it's the sort of thing where it's like when you see the odds or look up the odds of like maybe getting an item or whatever, it is probably enough for you to like not spend any money. And at that point, that's why they haven't been in there in the first place. At that point, they have to make the odds better in the player's favor. Like it's a give and take now that the curtain has been pulled back. And I think that's a very good step in the right direction, because sure, you can make the loot boxes exist now, and now people will finally feel like, okay, this is fair now. I see what the odds are like. I guess I'm going to give you money now, which seems a lot less scummy. It seems a lot less that you're tricking people, which is always good.
So speaking of scumminess and tricking people and loot box odds, our final story in this section is, so from the same sort of government meeting where loot boxes and microtransactions and all that were discussed, there was kind of a disturbing fact that came out, and that is that, this part's not too shocking. Publishers pay people to go on YouTube and Twitch and whatever and just, open loot boxes on their channel, because then if they have, tens of thousands of viewers, hopefully people see, look how fun it is. There's fireworks and stuff when you open it. I want to do that too. So that's obviously something that's been going on for a while. But according to Omid Dariani, who is CEO of the Online Performers Group, so basically he represents video content creators and streamers and that sort of thing. He helps them with their contracts, or at least that's what his company does. So he confirmed that he knows of at least one case where a publisher asked a streamer to do this sort of, unboxing a loot box kind of stream, but to do it with altered loot boxes that had better odds than what are actually in the game, so that when he would open them up, or she would open them up, they get really good stuff, even though if, someone in real life throws money at it like that, they probably won't get the same good stuff.
I mean, there's a reason that they're trying to lie about it. It's because they know that if they disclose the likelihood of actually getting what you want, then people aren't going to buy the loot boxes on the scale that they have been. So this is it's not really surprising to see. I just wonder how big of an issue this actually is in the industry, and whether or not people actually realize if streamers are using these altered loot boxes.
Yeah, currently there's nothing legally preventing companies from doing this. So, loot box odds will soon be disclosed in most games, but there really isn't anything requiring you to do that when you pay someone to stream it.
No, I mean, it's just that sort of thing where, we're all three games journalists, so we get it all the time where it's like, oh, you're obviously paid off for this and that. And it's like so much more that happens to content creators because they're typically the sole person on their team. So the temptation to be like, well, I'm just going to take this bribe essentially, and literally no one will know. It's not like my colleague is going to know. It's not like I have a business partner that's going to know. There's no one really that holds them accountable. And so, there's probably numerous instances where you've just been sold stuff based off of a content creator who was paid in order to stream that game, or paid to open a bunch of loot boxes that had better odds. And so So the beauty in it is not knowing ever. That's what the people who are marketing this to you think. And
Sure.
to see someone come out and be like, hey, this does happen, is something that I think is only good news, really, because it lets more people know that, hey, this scummy stuff happens. Like it and you've probably fallen victim to it.
Yep, more consumer awareness is always a good thing in my book.
Yep,
For sure.
I agree.
All right, so moving on, we have just two more stories in our news segment, and they're both sort of fan controversies. As you remember, the entire internet had a breakdown when they saw the first trailer for the Sonic movie, and Paramount decided to delay it, take more time, change the design, and hopefully get it right. And Jim Carrey was recently quoted as saying that basically he doesn't know if this was the greatest move. He's not sure if you should let fans, influence like your creative direction, and he's worried that it's just sort of a vocal minority of bandwagon fans that now are kind of calling the shots for this movie when the majority of people maybe don't necessarily share that same view. Do you guys agree with that, or do you think it's a good thing that Sega, or that Paramount, I guess, is listening to the backlash?
As a principle, I tend to agree with what he's saying, because generally I want whoever's making the movie to have their vision fulfilled. But in this case, like, it just looked terrible. So I'm really happy that they went back and made the changes. Generally, I'm more confident in the creators to make the creation, but when it comes to Sonic, it isn't a vocal minority. I think a lot of Sonic fans saw that original design and knew that the team behind the scenes didn't really know what they were doing, and so yeah, I think this delay in working on the design is warranted.
And I mean, it's the sort of thing, though. I mean, Jim Carrey, he is very removed from the games industry.
And from most people in general.
Yeah, but I think he's an incredible actor. If you've seen the first season of Kidding, his new Showtime series, is very good. He's still an incredible actor, and I think he takes his art very seriously, which for an actor, or just the art of filmmaking very seriously. Not he's not a narcissist. I mean that in the sense that he thinks that movies and television series, the people making them, are the most important people in a production rather than an audience, because he sees their blood, sweat, and tears all the time. And I think it's good that he's trying to give perspective to those people. But it's also that sort of thing where I think about it, I'm like, okay, where did the design of this Sonic from this Sonic movie come from? And I think about it, I'm like, it's probably just a group of people who have they just got him off the street. They don't know anything about Sonic the Hedgehog. And they showed them maybe 14 slides of different Sonic the Hedgehog designs. And we're like, which one looks best to you? Which one would you buy a toy for your child from? And I feel like, because there's no way that was an artistic interpretation of that character. That felt like a focus-tested, very calculated, very, in their eyes, marketable version of that character. And
the director even said that he, had complaints from Sega, basically, that they were very apprehensive about the design, and he just kind of pushed ahead anyway. So
yeah, because I mean, this is Paramount. Really, with this movie is still in the same echelon as their Transformers films, where at the end of the day they're trying to get money from these. These aren't supposed to be running for Oscars. They're not supposed to be running for awards season. They're trying to see, okay, how much money can we make back on this? And I think when that is the precipice of your art, then when an overwhelming amount of people are like, hey, you should change this, I don't like this, and everything, then you realize that, oh shoot, maybe this gamble where we're trying to get as much money as possible might not work out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think they changed it, because of money, of course, but at the beginning, I think it was this version of Sonic the Hedgehog was birthed out of a womb of money. So I don't know.
There's a mental image.
Yeah, there's your mental image.
There's an unfortunate disconnect between the filmmaking industry and the video game audience, and it's so apparent here because you can just tell that original Sonic design was almost like cooked up in a lab. It's like they just engineered it to be the most marketable, like Danny was saying, create the most toys. Jim Carrey just doesn't really have a keen eye on that, so I'm not surprised at his comments, but...
Yeah, I mean, like, I see where he's coming from, because he's probably thinking first and foremost, I don't mean it in the sense that I don't think he means it in the sense that he's like, yeah, those trolls online changed my movie. I think he means it in the sense that it's like, hey, I've met those editors that are now having to work a bunch of hours now, and, like, who are having to go back and, like, see like their creation in a sense, because it is still their creation, because it's filmmaking is a collaborative process, to see their souls get crushed and everything. So he has a different perspective than anyone else does. So I see where he's coming from. Yeah, I see where he's coming, but it is true. He just doesn't fully understand like the games industry, and nor should we like expect him to though as well.
All right, so moving on to our final story about fans just absolutely going nuts. There's this game coming out for PS4 called Genshin Impact, and a lot of people think that it resembles Breath of the Wild, to the point where someone at a China event for the Switch actually like smashed a PS4 in protest, and I think there might have been like an online petition and people going crazy on social media. To be honest, I've looked at, the trailer and stuff, and yeah, the world looks vaguely Hyrule-ish, and some of the music sounds similar, but I've seen games that were much more obvious knockoffs that got way less hate than this. I don't really get it, to be honest.
I think it's just a culture disconnect, really, from like, because I guess a lot of people in China really like Nintendo. They really like the Nintendo Switch, and they love Breath of the Wild. And so this is just very much a thing where it's like, sure, the fan bases in like the West here in America have somewhat simmered down. To me, I look at this and it's like a Genesis does what Nintendo don't sort of moment, where like you just have these rabid, I know that's like more corporate marketing, but I mean like just that aggressively like defending a brand and like putting a brand out there. I mean, I saw the video and like the environments definitely look like they're from Breath of the Wild, and like some of the different UI elements, but yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective into how that culture is reacting to Nintendo's stuff, and how they're already gaining an allegiance, if you will, to Nintendo.
Yeah, and Switch isn't even like available for purchase yet officially in China.
Oh, so that dude who pulled out his Switch during that thing just like imported it or something?
Have, yeah.
Yeah, huh?
Must have. He's like, check this out.
Like, because they just recently publicly announced plans to launch in China. They still haven't even put out a date yet, so...
Because that's going to be Tencent.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah, I don't really get the comparisons between Genshin and Breath of the Wild. The scope of the world looks the same, the grass and the animations look similar, but other than that, yeah, I don't really get it.
Yeah, the characters remind me more of like Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem, totally.
Yeah. And even, like, the engine has a slightly more cartoonish tint to it, where it almost feels like Breath of the Wild with, like, 20% of a Fortnite skin on it or something. Like, it's just got this slightly more, like, smooth, glossy, cartoonish looking to me.
It's a lot brighter, too, I feel like.
Yeah, it's less anime and more cartoony, which is weird because its characters are more anime. So.
Yeah.
Alright, so that about wraps it up for our news segment, so we're going to go ahead and move it on over to our discussion segment, which is Pokémon Sword and Shield. Game Freak just released a new trailer with lots of new details, so let's go over that real quick, and then we'll just kind of dive into our general thoughts on the series. Or not on the series, on the upcoming games, I should say.
Yeah.
So some of the new things we learned are that your Pokemon can get Poké Jobs in the Galar region of Sword and Shield, so this, I don't know if it'll replace the daycare or what, but you can sort of like sign your Pokemon up for jobs, and they can earn EXP and get you rare items and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of a nifty little feature.
Yeah, I love that. I just think it's a small little detail that will make the game feel a lot bigger overall. It's like when Pokemon games come out, I'm always looking for the little new additions, because overall the games are structured generally the same. But I'm always looking for what are the new quirks, what are the new elements of the game. And I think this one, it seems really fun and it's cool. I dig it.
The whole thing with the Pokemon having jobs and everything, I just want to see exactly how that's implemented in the game. Like, I'm a little more trepidatious with it, just in the sense that it's like, am I just gonna get XP for this? Like, is that really all it's gonna boil down to? Are these, so have you guys been able to tell if these are like mini games that they'll be able to do, or like?
It kind of seems like you just like select the Pokemon,
So
and
that's
then
what I
select
thought,
the
too.
job. Yeah, and then they're gone for X amount of hours. And then you can pick them up, and yeah. So I don't. Maybe there'll be some minigame component to it, but I don't think we've seen that yet.
Because I'm sold if it's like, oh, now there's a Cooking Mama minigame and I'm playing as Pikachu.
Overcooked Pokemon style.
Oh, I would cry.
I mean, they kind of flirted with that with the super training and X and Y, but it was just all the same thing. Beat up this punching bag, you know?
Yeah.
And then they also had, I don't remember what they were called, but there was like the 4 little islands you could drop your Pokemon off of, and that kind of felt like a mobile app.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what... Because it's just that sort of thing where it's like, you're already getting so much XP in Pokemon games, I feel like. And so, like, what really is the incentive for me to do this, particularly, is kind of what I'm searching for. Because when I saw the trailer, I wasn't sure if it was like, oh, is this going to be a minigame thing? Is it just going to be, I'm going to send my Pokemon away and then they're going to come back? And yeah, I don't know. I'm still a little... not sure exactly what this system means for the greater game, but as you said, like, you were like, I like the small additions, and I think that's good. Like, those small additions do add up. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. And so, from this trailer, we also got to look at some new Pokemon from the Galar region, as well as confirmation that there's going to be Galarian forms of Pokemon. So there are some pretty cool ones, like Galarian Weezing's hilarious. So one of the new forms is Zigzagoon is going to have a Galarian form, and it'll turn into Galarian Linoone. And then it's actually going to have a new evolution called Obstagoon, which is very obviously based on Kiss. And so Gene Simmons from Kiss has, a habit of being a little fast and loose with lawsuits when he thinks someone's making money off of him. But apparently he has chimed in and said that he likes Obstagoon, so he will not be trying to sue the Pokemon Company for that.
We have Gene Simmons' seal of approval for Obstagoon. That means the Pokemon is the new franchise, whatever. No, I think it's cool, the new Pokemon they showed off. And this confirms that Galarian forms apply to not just Kanto Pokemon, because we had in Alola only Kanto Pokemon undergoing Alolan forms, so now we have Linoone turning into Obstagoon, confirming that. So that has me excited, just the possibilities as to what Galarian forms we could see. I know a lot of people are bummed about the lack of a national dex, as am I, and I don't think that's the right move, but I think this feature is one of the things they're doing to supplement the lack of a national dex. We're still getting new Pokemon, just sort of in a different way, so I like it.
So yeah, let's go ahead and open this up to more general discussion. I think early on, I think a lot of people were pretty pleased with Sun and Moon based on the early trailers. I think there was a lot of hype. And I would say more recently, it's been a lot more controversial. When people found out that there's not going to be a full national dex, and there's been some controversy over some graphics, and particularly a tree that looked bad, because, a tree in a beta is obviously indicative of the entire game. So I think there's a lot of controversy around these games. There's people that are super excited for them. There's people that are swearing them off and saying all kinds of horrible things about Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. So where do you guys fall on this? I'll start with you, Aric. What are you still hyped for Pokemon Sword and Shield?
I am. I'm hyped for Pokemon Sword and Shield. I don't think the games look perfect, and I'm not a fan of every decision. Like I just said with the national dex, I would have definitely left that in, and I think that's a mistake. But overall, the games look fun. They look expansive. Visually, I think you can pick at little things like the tree that look really bad, and it's true that that tree did look really bad. In general, I think the games are a step up, and I think they look pretty good. I'm happy with the way they look. Are they to the level of which a modern console Pokemon game should be? I'm not really sure, but they're the most, I would say, modern graphics we've seen from a Pokemon game, and I like that. So overall, I would say I'm a fan of what the games look like, and I think they're introducing a lot of small things and a lot of narrative quirks with the other characters that I think could and will end up being a pretty good game, I'm hoping. But what about you, Danny?
So I see the thing is that I don't have any like childhood nostalgic attachment to Pokemon. I didn't play the games until I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old.
You were still a child then.
I was obviously at that point just very seasoned and no.
I was a full-grown mature adult.
I was a
full-grown
full-grown
when I first
12-year-old.
encountered Pokemon.
But it wasn't like my first RPG was the thing.
Sure.
Like, which is what it seems like it is for a few people. And even then, like when I was playing like Pokemon like Pearl and Diamond, I was like, oh, I kind of just want to play Final Fantasy instead because this is kind of like a little bit easier like mechanically, but it wasn't like distractingly easy. And I felt like after, I think it was after Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they started releasing the games like yearly, the main entries, probably up until 2018 when they did Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee if you don't count those. But it seemed like they did it every year. And the last time I particularly really enjoyed one was actually kind of like Pokemon X and Y. I still liked Sun and Moon, and I didn't play Ultra Sun and Moon. But it was that sort of thing where I kind of was like, oh, what if they took a year off though? You know, like what if they took like even 2 years off? What would a Pokemon game look like? And I was excited when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee got revealed, not just because those are the two cutest beings that have ever been conjured, but I was like, okay, cool, they're gonna take a year off and this is going to look incredible. And a lot of people were very mad that they were gonna take a year off, and I was kind of like, well, you're going to get this different kind of Pokemon game. Like the whole catching, the battling system, everything was a little different. And it was the first look at what a next-gen Pokemon game is going to be like. And I loved Pokemon Let's Go because I'm a big Pokemon Go fan as well. And I mean, when the trailers for Sword and Shield were shown off, I felt kind of underwhelmed. And that feeling of underwhelming feeling is just like, kind of transcended into where we are now, where it's like I look at it and the more and more I look at it, I'm like, I'll get the one after this, guys. Like I'll get into the one that's after this particular generation that you're doing here, because it's just that sort of thing where it isn't their fault. They're trying their best, but games are hard to make. And if you're trying to do a quick turnaround or have to in like 10 to 12 months, like I sympathize with that. If you told me, hey, you got to make a Pokemon game in 12 months, I'm going to be like, I don't know about that, my guy. Like give me at least 2 or 3 years, especially if I've been like making them for years and years and years. Like I don't,
well, Danny,
I don't know.
Up to this point, you've mostly been talking about the visuals. Was there, like, gameplay-wise, are you underwhelmed in that aspect too, or is it mostly just you're kind of looking at this world and going, not for me?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the weird thing too, is like you talk about like things like the lack of a national dex, and like even if it's not as polished, but you're gonna still manage to hit that same quantity over quality, then sure, go ahead and delay it another year, because at this point I feel like they're achieving at neither. Is the thing to me. Like I think it's super cool. I think the region looks interesting. I think a lot of people were kind of like, oh, Team Yell, I don't know about that, but I think it's like, okay, it's different. I like different, and sure, the visuals may not look as great, but it just doesn't seem like anything that has come out and been like, here's the Pokemon that is being introduced in that game that you're gonna be like, this is my new favorite Pokemon, or like,
oh, you're not sold on Galarian Weezing?
I mean, I might be. It was close. I looked at.
I'm actually.
I didn't
I'm a
think
pretty
that
big
was
fan
real.
of Dreadnought too.
More
He looks really
more
cool.
Pecco, no more Pecco, guys. Come on, I mean,
That's the one that gets hangry, right?
Yeah, hangry Morpeko, and what's the other
just
one?
Weird, because it's the sort of thing for me where I'm like, okay, what am I most excited for Pokemon Sword and Shield? And it's like, I get to use that Pokeball I got from Pokemon Let's Go, and the Pokemon become very big. And I'm like, I don't know if that's worth the $60. Is the thing.
So, I know the thing that I would say I'm the most excited about is the wild area. I really like the idea of this, even if it's not the whole game, having a large section that's sort of open world, free exploration, free camera, you know, that you can control. And, you know, they brought back from Let's Go, where Pokemon will actually physically appear on the overworld,
which is
instead
good.
of just randomly spawning, but in a much more realistic feeling environment, because you're actually, you know, like I said, free control of the camera, free roaming around. There's, you know, lakes and rivers and bridges and trees and stuff and desert, and you can just kind of explore this area to your heart's content. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as I mentioned on a previous episode, I'm really disappointed we didn't get to check it out at E3, because I feel like they're not putting their best foot forward by just being like, oh, here's a just fairly standard gym battle you can take on. I don't think that's the selling point of Sword and Shield. Look at this gym battle, you know?
Well, so the thing is like, I was actually going to mention the wild area is the thing that I'm most excited for, but I think there's a reason why they didn't show it to us at E3, and it's probably because it's not fairly well optimized as of yet. I mean, it looks fine in the trailers, but
except for that tree.
Of course.
Except
but
for the
I think
Ocarina of Time tree.
I think it'll be that sort of thing where people are expecting the Breath of the Wild moment to happen in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and it will not be that. And I want it to be that so badly, but I think there's still the possibility that it might not be.
Yeah, I get that for sure. I honestly think Sword and Shield is introducing players to, like, classic aspects of Pokemon that they aren't really realizing yet. Like, the rival, Beed, seems totally like an antagonistic, like, snarky rival that we haven't seen in a couple games. Like, that used to be the norm in Pokemon games, and then over time the rivals became, like, friendlier and friendlier. So we're getting a stuck-up rival, which I think is great. That's classic Pokemon.
Yeah.
And then we're also getting Marnie, who has the Team Yell. They're crazy about her. I think the dynamics between the characters is going to be a really big part of the game. And I have a feeling that Team Yell, although they seem very harmless and very, like, comedic almost at this point, I think as we play the game and as more information comes out about the game, it's going to be, I just have a feeling that there's going to be a lot deeper of a narrative that we just haven't really seen yet.
I could see them pulling something with, like, what they did in Sun and Moon, where you have Team, what do they call it? Team Skull?
Yep, Team Skull.
Yeah. So they're just kind of these, you know, lovable idiots, basically, or whatever. But then it's like, they're not really the main antagonists. So I can see Team Yell sort of being a distraction like that. But in general, I just like the idea of Team Yell being, like, the personification of a toxic fan base. Like you know, just loud and obnoxious and just making a rough time for everyone. And I think it's pretty interesting that is sort of the villain team for the game that has so much online controversy around it, with, you know, the fan base being so angry at so many things right now. It's very ironic timing.
It's, like, so perfect, it makes you wonder if they, like, created the game and in the back of their minds they knew that there was going to be outcry about the game and they just didn't care, and that was the plan. That's what I'm kind of thinking. Yeah, I think it's great that the team is pretty much just, like I said, I just realized that Danny's our Reddit guy, so I don't mean to hate on Reddit, but
I'm not a Reddit guy. I just live there, okay?
Oh,
like,
I see.
It's like living in Florida.
Yeah, no one's a Florida guy, come on. No, what were you going to say, though, Danny?
Well, so to go off of that, I think that'll be the saving grace for me for this game. If it comes out and you guys are like, hey, so, like, the Team Yell, they go through developments. There's some narrative progression that is happening with the rival. If there is an interesting story to this game, I will play it. Because, yeah, I don't know.
I think that Chairman Rose, who was not in the most recent trailer that we just discussed, but was in the Direct, I believe, last month, he's basically backing rival Beed's bid for the Pokemon Challenge, the Gym Challenge. So I have a feeling that Chairman Rose and Beed are going to have something to do with the sinister plan that gets cooked up behind the scenes. Pokemon games always have kind of a plot that's hidden behind that you don't really discover until you're late in the game. And I have
There's
a
like
feeling
a subversion of expectations.
Pretty much, yeah. And I have a feeling that that's going to be the same in this game too.
Yeah, Chairman Rose just oozes shadiness to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're marketing him as like intentionally, shady.
Okay, then. I mean, I think I'll check it out just to see like what if that story is good, and I hear like feedback about how the story is good. I will not really care about how it's basically just like not a super innovative Pokemon experience and maybe a little rough around the edges. Like at that point, like.
Well, so how do you feel about both Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing? So Dynamaxing, all it is your Pokemon turns gigantic for 3 turns. But then Gigantamaxing, your Pokemon turns big, and then you get access to a G-Max move. So I feel like that aspect of the battles could add some depth to what was previously just spectacle. You know what I mean? Like giant
so
Pokemon
that was the
battles.
thing, is I thought it was just spectacle. I didn't. You saying that right now is I must not have been paying enough attention to.
Yeah, Gigantamaxing is kind of like Mega Evolution and Z-Move rolled up into one.
Basically,
so you actually do change form and get a stat boost, and then you also get a new like crazy super powered anime finisher move.
I kind of
Whereas
like
Dynamaxing is just the big stat boost and you get bigger. So
and I like that more than Mega Evolutions too, kind of.
See, I actually liked Mega Evolutions quite a bit.
The designs were cool.
And I did not like Z moves at all, so I kind of agree with the idea of, let's just streamline them, make them both the same thing in this game. And there seems to be a lot of that general idea of let's streamline the combat a bit. Like they said part of the reason that there's not going to be a full national dex is because like there's over 1,000 Pokemon when you include alternate forms now, and the battle system was just getting too complex. So they're trying to find ways to like keep the battles somewhat balanced and engaging, and they didn't think they could do that by bringing back all of these old features and all of the old Pokemon as well, which is, it's bittersweet. There's definitely Pokemon I'm gonna miss. I really hope I can bring over all of my shiny babies from Let's Go, because I spent so many hours hunting them down. But yeah, in general, I don't feel like I need a full Pokédex, or, a full national dex. I've never really been one to try to catch every single Pokemon, after they got past like 251. So I can understand where they're coming from with that, but it's tough, It's tough to tell people like you're not going to be able to bring all of your old favorites over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated message when the franchise is built around gotta catch 'em all. I mean, that doesn't really remain true today. The games aren't hinged upon that slogan or whatever, but that is the general theme of Pokemon, is exploring and catching. And I think just, not having the national dex will hurt the overall experience. And like you were saying, there's so much complication with Pokemon and moves, so they weren't able to do a national dex. But you wonder if they did delay development a year or two, if there would have been time to somehow, implement that. I know I'm supposed to be the pro Pokemon guy here. I'm just thinking about if they had delayed development, we could have a national dex. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't expect it, just because Masuda seemed to indicate that this would be the new standard, that future games would have just sort of like, hey, we're gonna, pick whatever, a few hundred Pokemon and balance the game around them, instead of, trying to somehow create a balance for all 1,000 plus. So, maybe someday in the future, as a big awesome present to fans, they're like, hey, we found out a way to put all 11 generations of Pokemon in one game. But for now, for Gen 8 and presumably in the near future after that, it doesn't sound like they're going to try to make a complete national dex again. I'm
just wondering as well, like, if the Galarian forms, so that's obviously not going to continue to the next region, but if they are going to try to, like I was saying earlier, introduce new Pokemon by virtue of being regional forms, that could be the way that they, consistently up the amount of Pokemon by not actually putting in every Pokemon into a game. So I think there are ways they can work around it, but if this is the new norm, which it sounds like it is, I think Pokemon fans are just gonna have to unfortunately accept it.
Yeah, because I feel like we were talking about the whole quantity over quality thing, and while sure I may have had some qualms about like the Pokemon games being innovative or not, the past couple entries that they've had and being like, hey, you guys should like take your time and everything. I think the one thing that like saved everything for them was that pre-established fan base that is like, oh, I got the complete decks in the previous games. I'm gonna just upgrade to the next one, and then get the complete decks again. Like, and I feel like they might be feeling a little like those are the most vocal ones, are the ones that have been invested in this series and like have caught them all in the past like 10 to 12 years, and now it doesn't mean anything, which is understandable. Like I'd be upset too if that precedent was set. And all
but of course, the most vocal ones don't always represent what the actual masses think.
Of course, that's maybe like a couple hundred people who have the complete deck.
And that's the position that Games Freak's in. Trying to do we cater to our loudest, angriest, most long-lasting fans, or the millions of future potential fans too.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't envy them. I don't envy them in the sense that they have to put out one of these like incredible games every year, and I don't envy them in the sense that they have a very committed fan base who understandably are incredibly hard to please sometimes. Like, yeah, I have nothing but sympathy for Game Freak.
I think there's a lot of worry, a lot of, I don't know what the word is for this. People are worried about Sword and Shield, but I think when it comes out, players will realize that it's not that much different, and that they have the Game Freak has done things to add to the depth of the game, and that they implemented new things that make Pokemon more of a modern experience. Ultimately, I think people are worried, but I'm excited for the games, and I think I have faith in the Pokemon company and Game Freak to make quality products. Honestly, I have faith in them.
Yeah. They put out consistently good stuff. I almost said they've never let me down, but to be fair, I wasn't a huge fan of Gen 5 or the first, 1/4 of Sun and Moon, and then after that it got better. But in general, I'm pretty hyped for Sun and Moon. There's going to be things I don't like. There's going to be some issues here and there. There may be a tree that isn't perfectly textured, but I'm excited for these games. I'm definitely going to pick one of them up this holiday season.
Which one, Sword or Shield?
To be determined.
Flip a coin.
I'm getting Shield.
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for us for this episode. Thank you, everyone who tuned in to listen to this, and thank you guys for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, so you can tune in probably about 2 weeks for our next episode, and until then, you can always find great Nintendo coverage at Nintendo Enthusiast. And if you want to follow me, you can check me out on Twitter at Erimgard, ERIMGARD. Aric?
You can hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Schweens, MRSHWEENZ.
And Danny?
Oh yeah, you can also find me on Twitter at Shadowforks, which is SHADOWFORKS.
All right, thanks again for joining me, you guys.
Shadowforks.
Yep. Shadowforks.
Bye, everybody. Till next time.
See ya.
Yep.